Have you been wondering if your vertical content leaves a little bit to be desired? Maybe you're here on YouTube looking for some awesome tips about how you can elevate your vertical content. Well, stay tuned because I've got 12 tips for better views and better engagement. Let's get into it. This video is sponsored by MotionVFX. More on them sprinkled throughout the video. Hey friends, Will here, and I've been shooting and editing a ton more vertical content over the last 2 years. It's really exploded, and now more and more of my client work has some element of vertical content to it. I seem to have overcome a lot of challenges, ran into a lot of roadblocks myself with creating vertical content if I try and approach it in the same way as landscape content. So I thought I would put together 12 tips which I've definitely learned the hard way over the time that I've been creating vertical content, and hopefully these will give you some value if you're thinking about creating or improving the creation of your vertical content too. Tip number 1 sounds really straightforward. Make sure that you're shooting for vertical content. So what I mean by that is turn your camera into portrait mode. So you're shooting sideways. If you're shooting on a phone, then you're holding it in vertical format. It seems like a really straightforward thing, but a lot of people, their go-to way of shooting is obviously to turn the camera sideways. This makes life so much more challenging when you get to the edit. That said, if you're trying to shoot for multiple platforms, then just try and consider the fact that you're going to be shooting vertical content. And what I mean by this is if you're shooting landscape, then try and shoot a little bit wider than you need in landscape, so that when you edit your landscape video, you can crop into your preferred landscape composition, but when you come to edit the reel, you can really make use of that extra top and bottom footage that you've got. And means that the one I see a lot is people interview footage, and once it's cropped to vertical video, you've got someone's face really tight and really big in the frame, and if they just had a little bit more footage, then it would make the world of difference. Oh hi, Editor Will here, and I'm going to be popping in throughout this video when relevant to give you some more practical examples of how I'm implementing these tips, all thanks to some products provided by MotionVFX, which is this video's sponsor. Thank you so much to MotionVFX. They've given me 3 asset packs today, which are all focused around vertical content. They're all available for Final Cut Pro and for DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to be nipping in here and showing you some examples of how I'm putting those assets to use in line with the tips that other guy is talking about. That first tip that we've just talked about, shooting for the correct format, but obviously that's not always possible, and sometimes no matter what format we shoot in, we are repurposing content for different uses. And that is where this first plugin from MotionVFX comes in really handy. It's called mVertical. It's a completely free plugin as well, so go and download it, give it a try for yourself, and it also gives you a great idea of the quality that you can expect from all assets from MotionVFX. But yeah, if we dive into my screen, a quick example for you here. I've got a landscape 1080p project here, and I've dropped in some previously shot vertical content, and I want to repurpose it. Now, obviously, the challenge we always have with this kind of footage is how do we now compose it to look good? Well, if I come into my effects browser, come to mVertical, also worth mentioning, all MotionVFX packs are installed through the mInstaller app, which you can download from the MotionVFX website. It makes installing all of these plugins and effects so easy, such a painless experience, and they also push updates to their plugins through that same installer platform, so really easy. So once you've got them installed, I've got this mVertical. As I said, this is totally free, and if I drag this over the top of my footage that I've put on the timeline, extend it to the length, and you can see straight away out of the box it has given this duplicate version behind the footage, blurred it out a little bit, and it's just a much more engaging way to show vertical content in a landscape timeline. Obviously, in a perfect world, we always shoot for the aspect ratio we're delivering, but you know, there are times when we can't do that. So within the actual effect, once we've applied it, if we come over to the inspector panel, we've got a ton of other fine-tuning controls that we can dial into. So for example, we've got 3 different modes. We can scale, which is what you're seeing here. We can mirror, which actually creates a mirror version of the footage in the background. Or we have got copy, which basically creates a duplicate version behind like that. So similar effects, but just depending on what you like. I particularly quite like the default scale effect. And then we've got a ton of position adjustments that we can make. If you want to move the footage around, for example, then you can do that. And then we've also got our opacity for the source, so we can change that. And scrolling down furthermore, we've also got background opacity. So if you think it's too sort of in your face, then you can drop that opacity down so that your vertical content sort of stays front and center. And you can even change the background color. So if you're working with a particular brand that has a color scheme, then you can play around with the color overlay as well. So that's really great. And this plugin is not just for vertical content going into a landscape timeline. I've got another project here. So here I've got a vertical project and I'm trying to put landscape content into it. So now I'm creating vertical content. And again, if I go to my effects browser, grab mVertical, drag it onto my timeline, resize the length for the clip, and it's done exactly the same thing there to create this nice effect. And again, we've got all of the same control up here that we had before, depending on how you want to use it, depending on what you think is the most visually pleasing version of that. So yeah, that is mVertical, totally free. Download it for Final Cut or for DaVinci Resolve. Tip number 2 is to deliver the value within your content as quickly as you possibly can. When it comes to short form content, we haven't got time to be messing about. Now, a long time ago, someone taught me about the 3-act structure for any good storytelling, which is the proposition, conflict and resolution, that well-known storytelling structure. And that's really helpful when you're thinking about planning your short form video. So you can do some sort of short setup, background, something like that. Then you've got some sort of challenge, some sort of conflict that you're trying to overcome, and then how you resolved it. Now you can use that structure applied to all manner of different information that you're trying to convey. And then you take that 3-act structure. On the very beginning of it, you're going to add a hook. That's something quick and attention grabbing to draw your audience in. And then once you've told your story and you've finished the 3-act structure, you're going to add a call to action at the very end of the video so that you're encouraging people to engage with your content. So you've got 5 parts: hook, setup, conflict, resolution, call to action. And you can structure any short form video in that way. Use it loosely. Obviously, there are certain instances where it might not fit perfectly, but if you keep it in mind when you're planning your vertical content and your short form content, then it's a great little sort of rule of thumb to have in mind to make sure you're getting to the point and following a little process. Tip number 3 is to make sure that you experiment with different lengths of videos. I've seen a huge trend recently in much shorter, particularly Instagram Reels, and people sort of say, oh, I'm getting loads more views on my shorter videos, but I don't personally think it's quite as simple as that. So for me, I would encourage you to explore different lengths. Yes, there probably is some value in the fact that shorter reels do perform better, but you have to ask yourself, is it real engagement that you're seeing, or is it just the same people watching the video multiple times because it's so quick? You're almost tricking them into watching it multiple times. And just because you see a bigger view number, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting more engagement or providing more value through those shorter videos. On the other side of the spectrum, you know, if you look at certain TikTok videos, a lot of people are posting much longer and informative TikTok videos. So this one really just depends on your niche, your audience, and the type of content that your audience enjoy watching of yours, and also the type of content you're creating. Certain types of content, it's probably just not as easy to create very short or very long. So you just need to experiment and see what works for your audience. Hi, me again. And yes, when it comes to experimenting with different lengths for your vertical content, MotionVFX again has got your back, and this time we're talking about a different plugin called mReels, which is a great selection of different assets. And what's cool about this particular pack is it even includes templates, which are essentially pre-made reels or TikTok videos, whatever your preferred flavor of short form content is. And yeah, within this pack, look, we've got all of these different reel templates, and you can sort of go through them. They've got placeholders. So for example, I like this one here, this Reel 4 one. It's got 5 different drop zones for us to play with. And yeah, it's really easy to experiment with the different lengths of content that you can create. So if I drag this Reel 4 onto my timeline, you can see that by default, it is incredibly short. But what we can very easily do is we can select this reel template that we've put on our timeline, come into the inspector panel, and again we've got these 5 drop zones. So I can come into these drop zones and I can select whichever clip I want to put in each one of them. I can apply that clip, and then I can control the scale of that clip as well. And then we just work our way through each of the drop zones, select whatever we want to go into that drop zone, apply the clip. These images are from a recent shoot that I did with my fiance. We are expecting a baby imminently, and we thought it'd be nice to capture the her pregnant bump. And so again, I can scale this down to 46 roughly, I think is about right. And then we can go on to the next drop zone. And you see, it's just so easy and intuitive creating these reels with this. It's a real time saver. And then look, we've got this amazing fast reel. Now you might say that that's really fast, but that's the joy of these reel templates. If I think that's going a little bit fast, I can really easily just grab the end of it and extend it to whatever length I want. And there we go. And then finally, to make that reel really come alive, I might want to add some sound to it. So in this instance, I'm going to come to my sound effects here, and I'm going to search for camera. Let's see what this sounds like. That's perfect. I'm going to drag this in here. Maybe retime this to fit. And look how quick that was. Super easy, a ton of different templates available to you. Tip number 4 is to start your video with something eye-catching. This technique is called a pattern interrupt. And as people are scrolling through their feeds on whatever platform it is, if there's something almost jarring, then it grabs their attention. This is a great way that you could use transitions, animations, and you can combine this with the hook of your video, whatever it is you're saying, to grab attention. And those two things combined give you a much stronger chance of grabbing people's attention and keeping it. So when it comes to adding some sort of pattern interrupt to the beginning of your short form videos, mReels is a really great plugin and gives you loads of tools in order to do that, from overlays and transitions. If we dive into my screen, here is a recent video that I created for someone, and I've used one of the mReels transitions just to add that transition at the beginning of the video. You see how that's done there? And if I just come to a different project for a second, if I come into my effects browser, we've got all sorts of different things from, for example, this film overlay. I could add this little film overlay over the top here, add a bit to the beginning, and it's just a really nice, attention grabbing element to start your videos with. And again, mReels has got a ton of different things, from freeze frames and different sort of filters, from halation, things like low res effects and haze effects. So yeah, there's a ton of different things there that you can use. Tip number 5, people's attention spans are awful. And because of this, it's often beneficial to keep as much happening as you possibly can. This means that your Reels or your TikToks can be really quite fast paced, very snappy cuts, and don't underestimate the short amount of time that it takes for the human brain to see and interpret something, understand it, and have moved on. I always edit my vertical videos and then rewatch them a few times and actually generally end up shaving milliseconds off clips, tightening everything up, getting it as smooth flowing as I possibly can, but definitely keep everything as short as possible and as snappy as possible to keep people's attention. Tip number 6, kind of linked to tip number 5 as well. Just like when you're shooting landscape video, it's really important to use supplementary footage to help you convey the message that you're communicating. B-roll, as we call it. And with vertical video, we've got this extra vertical real estate on our screens, so we don't even need to necessarily cut all the way away from your face or whatever your A-roll is. You can actually use kind of cool split screen effects or overlays so that you can actually keep multiple things on the screen and thus keeping things more interesting as well. So yeah, when it comes to adding that extra footage to your videos, this plugin mShorts has some really cool features which I love. One in particular is this split screen effect. So if I show you this quick example here, you see we've got this nice additional clip popping in from the bottom and then sliding away. So what I'll do is I'll just mute that clip there and I'll show you really quickly how I created that effect really simply using the MotionVFX mShorts plugin. So I found my split screen horizontal plugin here and I'm going to drag that over the top of my clip, and what that does is it creates this drop zone here. So in the inspector panel, I'm going to come to my drop zone and I'm going to find the clip that I want to use. I'm going to select that clip there and add it to the drop zone, and then within the plugin controls I can also decide where I want it to slide in. So I'm going to choose the lower orientation, and again I can control the zoom of that clip as well. So for this one I want it to be fairly zoomed out, so probably about there. And I've also got control over whether I want this line to be dividing the footage. I actually quite like it, but you might want to change it, so I'm going to leave it turned on, but maybe let's change the color. Let's go for a black line instead, which sort of looks kind of nice. So then the other thing we've got is obviously with vertical content being quite fast paced, you might want to change the speed in which that pops up. This is one thing I would love for MotionVFX to actually implement a speed control into this particular effect, but it's dead easy for us to change the speed of this. We just need to create a new compound clip like so, and then within that compound clip we can use our cursor to find where that animation takes place. So it takes place about there. I can click here, I can do Shift B to set a new speed control, and then I can speed up the animation. So now that zooms in much quicker. And then similarly with the endpoint, I can work out where the animation begins here. I can do Shift B to put that speed cut at my playhead, and then again I can speed up the end section so that animate out happens much quicker. And then if that's still longer than I want it to be, then I can actually grab the middle of this as well, not that one, this one, and just speed that up. Those overlays are really cool, and they are from the mShorts pack. Tip number 7, and it's quite a big one. Make sure you're using graphics and text elements to help convey your story. It's about keeping people interested. It's about conveying information as quickly as you possibly can. So if you've got supplementary graphics, perhaps if you're covering important points, then you could bring those points up on screen as text to reinforce the points that you're making. And it's another great way to add visual interest to your vertical videos and keep people's attention. So when it comes to adding graphical elements and stuff like that to jazz up your vertical content, mReels and mShorts have both got a ton of useful things that you can use. Look, if we dive into my screen here, we've got mReels, we've got these like film overlays, we've got dispersion effects, dark colors. This film overlay I think is particularly cool. The hair and dust I like, it's nice and subtle. And then we've got the reel templates, which I've already touched upon, and a load of really nice typographical effects which you can use. You know, they've given you some landscape ones for when you're asking people to turn their phone around, and they're just perfectly made for vertical content. It's also worth noting though, all of these effects, whilst they are designed to work perfectly for vertical video, they actually work perfectly well when used on normal landscape footage as well. So if you're on the fence about kind of picking one of these packs up because you think, well, I need assets I can use on everything, then don't worry, these are perfect and they do work perfectly on landscape and on portrait footage. But yes, that is mReels, loads of really useful stuff in there. And then mShorts has got an absolute ton of different overlays, call to actions, all sorts of stuff, really cool frames and drop zones, and just, yeah, really useful and visually pleasing. And that's the other thing. I think a lot of the assets that you see out there may be functional, but they don't all have that great attention to detail on the actual design. Whereas MotionVFX, I really like the design of all of their assets. They're clean and minimal and not overbearing, and they're very easily editable into whatever the visual is that you're going for. They're not over the top in their design, which means you're not stuck with a look and feel that they've designed for you. It's really nice and an easy way to just edit them and get them looking the way that you want them to look for your projects. Tip number 8, consider using captions for your videos. Obviously, a lot of people are watching vertical content on their phones. Perhaps they're on their commute or whatever, and they're not listening to the sound of your video. So when it comes to adding captions, I tend to use two tools: CapCut, which is a really great free editing app. The second tool, which I've tended to lean back on more often than not recently, is the Captions app. It is a paid for app, but I like the visual styles that it offers you for the auto transcription and the styles that go along with it as well. So that's probably the one I would recommend if you're happy to spend a few quid a month for the membership. But CapCut also does an awesome job. So yes, consider using Captions, and there's two great tools that you can think about using. Tip number 9, watch out for those pesky UI elements within the social media apps. This has tripped me up so many times. I am always so disappointed when I upload something to Instagram or TikTok and then realise that I've positioned one of my graphical elements right on the video where one of the UI elements of the app appears. So in Instagram particularly, you've got like the top of the video and the bottom of the video. You want to think about those safe zones. You don't want any kind of action graphics elements. You don't want anything appearing in those top sections of the screen. And then in TikTok, this is the one that's tripped me up several times, down the right hand side of the user interface, you've got those kind of buttons and stuff down there as well. So if you're positioning text, graphics, images, anything like that, just make sure you're considering the platform you're going to be putting the vertical content onto, and think about those interface elements, where they're going to appear, and make sure that you're keeping your graphical elements away from them. Tip number 10, make sure that your videos include some sort of call to action at the end of them. If you're just posting because something's fun, then you don't always have to have a call to action. I think people get quite caught up on this, but yes, if you're trying to grow an audience or sell a product or whatever, make sure there's a next logical step for someone at the end of the video, and that might just be, you know, like and follow for more. mShorts absolutely has you covered when it comes to adding call to actions to the end of your vertical videos. You've got a massive section of call to actions here. You've got different elements that can be used to add interest to the end of your video, and even the sections which aren't called call to actions, these avatars, etc., they can all be repurposed and used to make really great call to actions for the end of your videos. If I just pop across actually to a previous project that I did for a client, you can see if I come to the end of this project, this is so that was just a really simple combination. I've used the gradient effect and I've used the arrow effect from mShorts to create that call to action. But if I wanted to do a slightly different call to action at the end of that video, then I can very easily just, let's get rid of these elements for now. And then let's replace it with this one, which is call to action 15. So that is from mShorts. Let's come down here. Where are we? mShorts. Yes, so that's this one here. So I've just dragged that onto my timeline. And we've now got this cool swipe up to react call to action. So they're dead easy. You just drop them onto your timeline, change the colors or whatever, and you're good to go. And there's no shortage of options. Tip number 11, think about the power of sound design. When you're putting together your short form content and you're using loads of transitions and graphics, this gives you loads of opportunities to incorporate a little bit of sound design into these graphics. Maybe you've got something whooshing onto the screen and whooshing off again, and just these little touches just help elevate, and it all again comes back to the point of a lot of these tips, which is keeping it engaging, keeping it entertaining, and keeping people watching your content. So a little bit of subtle sound design can go a long way, and I think because so many people neglect sound design when it comes to their short form content, it could be fairly low hanging fruit when it comes for ways that you can elevate your content above others out there. Tip number 12, this is it, the last tip. Beware of trending audio. I know this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I've started to see something happening time and time again, and I feel like it needs to be talked about. It's obviously very popular for people to upload their videos to Instagram, particularly I think this applies to, and go into the audio, add some trending audio, and it's become almost like this fast track way to getting more views, because if you can jump on a trend and get people watching the trending audio, watching videos with the trending audio, then it gets you more views than if you were to use your own original soundtrack or other royalty-free music. That's fine. There's definitely some truth in that. It definitely works. However, what I've started to see happening is when artists decide that they don't want their music to be on Instagram anymore, they remove it from the Instagram catalog, and then Instagram then removes that soundtrack from all of the reels on Instagram that are using that soundtrack. And not only that, they don't just remove the music, they remove any original audio that the video had when it was uploaded, which leaves you with a silent Instagram reel. Now, if it's a short piece to camera where you're talking about something and you've got a bit of background music, now suddenly you're left with then fair enough. I tend to prefer, because of this, to select my own royalty-free music from platforms like Epidemic Sound or Artlist, which gives me another advantage, which is that I can edit to those tracks, I can plan my cuts, I can do my sound design, I can master my levels, and to me it gives a much more polished experience to hand select a piece of music and edit to that music and create that short form content in that way than just uploading it and adding something that's trending. That is 12 tips to elevate your vertical video. There's going to be links down in the description to all of the products which have been mentioned throughout the tips in this video. I want to say a massive thank you to MotionVFX for sponsoring this video, and I love that they support this channel, so thanks so much, MotionVFX. Also worth noting that all of the products I've talked about in this video are also available not just for Final Cut Pro but also for DaVinci Resolve users, which is amazing. So if you're a DaVinci user, you don't need to feel left out. These tips can still work for you just as well. So yeah, check out the products, check out all of MotionVFX's products. I mean, they are just on fire. They truly do make some of the best Final Cut and DaVinci plugins that I've worked with. I mean, I haven't worked with the DaVinci because I'm a Final Cut guy, but you know, I've got to be honest, DaVinci is catching my eye at the moment. So we'll see what the future holds. But yes, that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.